when you're shooting movies on sound stages, generally you're building these huge sets, right? Generally, these huge sets that you see in movies all the time or on TV shows, there's nothing above them. There's no ceiling because 30 feet up in the air is the scaffolding, the metallic bars that hold lighting. So a lot of studios, a lot of movies, when you watch, if it's a house interior or something like that, generally there's no ceiling above the actors because it's for lighting. They need to put lights everywhere, and that's what that's for.
And false walls.
False walls as well. However, for Alien, Ridley Scott wanted and was adamant about creating a closed set environment by building on these two massive sound stages of Pinewood and Shepperton Studios all of the interiors and exteriors of the ship and of the planet and the derelict. And specifically with the spaceship, the Nostromo, where we have 3 floors basically on the ship
That we see.
really, that characters are interacting in. We have like the living bay, which is like Bay A. Then we have the different, like the medical bay and the mechanical bay, you could say. I'm just going off what I think, real quick. I don't know what they technically are called. A, B, and C.
Hey, it sounds great to
A, B,
me.
and C.
I'm all aboard, man.
The 3 decks,
all
right?
aboard.
And what Ridley did was they built these ships in these sound stages. He wanted to build them all on top of each other, each level, but they had to sparse it out. But they actually legitimately built every interior tunnel and corridor with closed ceilings and closed walls. Now, that's pretty rare to do, especially in this era, in this time of day and age, and especially with how compact and short the height of the ceilings are and tight the walls are. Because
tough to shoot in.
It's tough to shoot in, exactly. So they built closed ceilings, closed walls, massively long corridors, hundreds of feet long, and they literally just built the layout of the ships, which is really fascinating. It makes your shoot tougher, but at the same time, it adds a new quality where it feels so real because so many of these shots, Ridley's doing a lot of the handheld cinematography in this movie himself, and there's so much handheld in this movie. Sometimes it's very controlled, sometimes it's shaky as hell and out of control in the best ways possible. But, we're panning left to right. We're seeing down 1, 2, 3 corridors, down even more corridors that we can see in the distance because they built these sets closed with closed ceilings. Again, it adds difficult elements where most of the lighting in this movie is practical lighting built into the walls, built into the ceilings already of just what lights would be like on the spaceship. Of course, they had to add fill lights wherever they could. They would often just shine lights through walls. And
Why is there a light behind that pipe?
yeah, exactly. Like all these metal grates, there's just light pouring in. You don't think twice when you're watching the film, but they need to add some more light because they can't get lights in through the ceiling because it's a closed ceiling. So one aspect of it, you're kind of you're handcuffing yourself in a lot of ways, but at the same time, you're creating a wonderful aesthetic for the audience, but also for the actors to be in this incredible environment where they actually really feel like they're on a spaceship. But so many other issues arise from that where, you're dealing with CO2 gas tanks in a lot of situations. You're running out of oxygen because CO2 is eating up your oxygen.
It didn't have air conditioning in there.
Yeah, not great ventilation. Your spacesuits don't have great ventilation. Which we'll get into more and more, and all the fog created. But I think this aspect, which is so fascinating, to build closed ceiling and wall sets that stretch out for entire corridors of the blueprints of each deck is just so brilliant.
I'll tell you why he did it.
Why?
So, well, first of all, they could actually walk through the sets from start to finish because they were all connected, which is just so cool. Imagine that.
I am.
But the reason why Ridley Scott did it, and any filmmaker who really wants to capture a realism tone, you have to do something like this where, so take, for example, characters talking in the hall. So say take the Ripley and Parker with the smoke, and Brett's in the background behind Parker, and they're chatting back and forth. If they had used false walls, they would have done a wide and put the camera where one of the walls is, and then shot that scene wide. Subconsciously, the audience knows there's no way a camera can go right there because there's a wall. So when you take a false wall away and put a camera crew there, it takes away the realism, and it makes us feel like that set's not real. It makes us feel like, it's just a movie. Because there's no way a camera could go there if this is a real set. And so what Ridley Scott, the brilliance of him, and he is such a master of artistry when it comes to production, and even if you don't like some of his movies, you cannot deny his productions are impeccable with the best craftsmanship, the best costuming, the best production design imaginable. If you didn't like Napoleon, you know that movie looked incredible from every bell and whistle of it. He is so rigid with wanting to shoot everything practically and for real, and the sets need to feel real because he also knows that helps the performance of the actors, but it takes away that problem of subconsciously affecting the audience and taking them out of the illusion of the movie. So when you're forced to shoot in the confines of the set, you're only using angles that a person could see through. So there's something like I have this kind of a small issue with the period pieces, except for Lord of the Rings.
Because it's perfect.
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
They're
There's nothing
magic.
wrong with Lord of the Rings.
But sometimes when I watch like an old period piece and there's like a helicopter shot or like a drone shot, it's like that's not possible back then. I mean, if you do a contemporary film, do all the fucking drone shots you want. But there's something that kind of takes you out of it subconsciously because drones weren't existent back then. And so when you photograph things with too much contemporary filmmaking, it can take the audience out of it. And also with the sets, I watched a movie last week. And there's two characters driving. The camera was in front of them, filming them as a two-shot. It was fine, but then the camera pushed in on a dolly track as they were driving. And I was
On
like...
the two-shot?
Yeah, on the two-shot. And so obviously the camera was on the truck that was actually driving the vehicle. But for some reason, they did a push-in into the windshield. And I was like, there's no way... that just doesn't make sense. Like, practically, it made me aware that a movie was being made with that unrealistic camera placement and movement. So that's something that can take an audience out of a film. Ridley Scott understands that. Yeah, it's hard to shoot it this way, but it makes the movie all the more special for it.
I'm not saying that no sets today are built without
Yeah.
ceilings.
Yeah.
There are ceilings built on sets all the time. However, not this low. The highest point of the ceilings on the ships are 6'6".
Wow, really?
So
Damn.
that's it's an NBA player. You know what I mean?
A medium NBA player.
Yeah, but for filmmaking, it makes it a lot tougher to shoot. It makes it a lot tougher to light, which means you have to get a little more creative. But also, there are some issues with lighting that maybe when you're making the movie, you're like, oh, it's so dark. When characters are improvising, they're moving around the set, they move into an area that's not well lit. From on set, or maybe watching the dailies in 1978 when they're filming this, they're probably like, oh, man, that looks terrible. It's so dark. But for the audience, we don't notice a goddamn thing because it looks like they're really on a spaceship.